Hello, my name is Gretchen Halverson. I'm the Manager of Digital Engagement and Access at the Minneapolis Institute of Art. Welcome. You know, I remember coming here a couple times in college and, at that moment, maybe not recognizing the sort of enormous asset we have here at MIA. I remember the first maybe month or so after I started interning here, coming out, in the fall evening, the light, it was dark out and the lights were hitting the columns here, and I just my breath was taken away because I was so excited to be contributing to this kind of institution. So after I graduated with a degree in political science, I was able to apply and gain employment with Target as a business analyst in their sourcing division. And I think I thought of it a little bit as, I'm not quite clear on what my next step is. I think that, Target's a great company. I'm not sure, about this role necessarily as a business analyst. I studied political science. What does that have to do with this? But I knew that I wanted to be employed, and I was able to, start making a paycheck and really learning a lot about just what it is to be a professional. After that, after working as a business analyst for about a year, was promoted to a senior business analyst with additional responsibilities, and it was at that point where I started to kind of think about where did my interest lie in this career at Target, and did a lot of informational interviews with folks across the organization, and landed on an interest in communications and marketing. So after lots of those conversations, I was able to apply as a position opened up, and was able to join the internal communications and executive, kind of support team. After working in that role for a little over a year, throughout that time, I kind of was reflecting on what it is I liked about that job, and perhaps what it is I was kind of craving that I wasn't maybe getting from that particular role. And for me, I really was craving some, kind of connection with my community in a way, and kind of connection to perhaps a more community-focused commitment directly. And I also started thinking a little bit back to kind of when I decided to choose political science. I had an interest in art history that I sort of toggled and managed. But I really was interested in pulling on that string a little bit more. So started to do some research on what does it take to work in museums? What does it take to work in the art field, the art world? And really felt like getting a master's degree was going to be a kind of my best bet at a career pivot. And so applied to several different graduate programs, and was able to get into the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. And it was during that time that I came across some scholarship regarding the Minneapolis Institute of Art and their efforts related to digital engagement, digital publishing, and literally just picked out the names that were quoted and referenced in that article, and found an email and sent them an email. And on a visit I had back to the cities, was able to do some informational interviews with these folks, and I kept in touch. I wasn't quite ready to graduate yet. I had about a year to 6 months left. And it was at that point, I kept, checking in, seeing what work they were doing, what they were excited about. And that ultimately led to an internship, upon graduation with the Minneapolis Institute of Art. And from there, I worked in the Division of Curatorial Affairs on some digital projects, and took a temp role as an administrator at the museum,
that was part-time and kept up my internship. And ultimately was able to take that temporary job into a full-time role and have moved up, I think it's 3 times now within that division. And it really did start with a conversation from an article that I found, and really just having the kind of courage and initiative to reach out. And I truly believe that is why I'm at the Minneapolis Institute of Art. And so I, encourage you to kind of take those opportunities as they come.
Yeah, so we're in the Whittier-Phillips neighborhood. Whittier and Phillips is a pretty diverse neighborhood. Lots of young folks, filtering in and out. We have the Minneapolis College of Art and Design as our neighbors, as well as the Children's Theater Company, all kind of situated on this campus. And so lots of different faces and audiences and different types of visitors coming in every day.
So thinking back to my time in the spring before graduating, I remember being pretty excited. I think pretty over doing lots of papers, feeling excited for the next chapter, but also pretty apprehensive given the sort of economic space that we were in during my graduation timing. And what I was really grateful for was to be able to kind of lean on our career center at the U of M, in order to support that. I was able to sign up for a on-campus interview with Target, and was able to prep with our experts in the Career Center on my resume, on prepping for interviews. And, I think that made me feel really sort of a little bit grounded going into the year ahead, or, the next kind of chapter of my life. And I think it's so important to kind of lean on those resources that you have available right now. I don't think that there will be any other time in your life that there will be such a supportive, space for you. And when I decided to take the position at Target, or frankly, when I was kind of debating what that would look like, I really relied on the conversations with the recruiter. I relied on the job description itself for me to kind of envision what that might look like, and what that might, where my interest would be. For me, the role, really centered on communication, particularly with the overseas vendors that Target works alongside to bring products to the store. And that communication piece was really interesting to me, and something I knew I had really honed within the College of Liberal Arts. And so while it felt a little bit sort of incongruent with perhaps my political science background, what I really started to think about was, what are the skills that this job requires? And for me, it required communication, it required organization, it required, a lot of kind of collaboration. And so for me, I thought, those are skills I really do have, and frankly, skills I like, or feel comfortable doing and like doing. And so that really made me feel okay with pursuing something I was a little bit unsure of, or a little bit unclear about how my skill set would fit in. And frankly, a little unclear is this what I want to do with my life? I think that's the question we're often asking ourselves is, how do I want to spend the rest of my life? And our jobs are a big part of our lives. And for me, I thought, I want to be employed. I know that this organization is going to, equip me with some really good experience. I don't have to stay forever. I think that's another really good thing to remember is, certainly you want to be, you want to give it a good shot, but it doesn't have to be your forever role. And frankly, it won't be. I think that is a pretty clear in terms of how our work environments work these days. And I really felt like okay, Target does a lot of things. This is one role. But once I have, my foot in the door, I really thought about what could I do next. And I was able to actually move to a different role in communications and marketing after working in the role I received, upon graduation. And I think that I don't know that I would have had that same opportunity had I not been an internal candidate who was really familiar with the company and the culture and the priorities. So that really, while I was apprehensive about the role, I think I'll admit I cried in the car before I was, went in, because I was like, is this the thing? Is this the forever job? Is this the right decision? And ultimately, I think it was, because I was able to learn just so many skills and meet a lot of people. That's another really wonderful thing about, getting outside of your university life is meeting new people. People that can be your friends, people that can be a part of your professional network. Taking that leap was definitely, a benefit. And I think that would be true of almost most jobs, is that you're going to learn something from it. You're going to take something really valuable from that.
So having a poli-sci degree, I kind of was like, can I work in an art museum? Is this an opportunity for me? And I think what I've learned since working here is that this large institution requires kind of every kind of job you can imagine. We have an accounting team, we have a marketing team, we have a PR team, we have facilities and engineers and web developers. So this space requires so many different types of talents and skills and energy. And so I would really encourage you to think about, your passion for, for things outside of your sort of immediate education, but think about how you can use your current education to support lots of organizations like this, other nonprofits. They all need lots of different skill sets, not just one that feels sort of niche like art history.
I think that the way that I approached my political science major as it related to my job search was really, that of honing in on the skill set. But I will say, I remember feeling really almost self-conscious about that very narrow niche of political science. I felt, they're not going to hire someone who has this degree. But actually, I think I was able to kind of recover from that feeling in the way that I approached looking at job descriptions. Kind of what are the skills that they're asking for in their candidate, and really doing some reflection on what those skills were that I have honed with my major. And I think doing that takes some practice, and it almost takes a little bit of storytelling about yourself, and imagining about yourself. How would you approach this role? How would you approach this job based on the skill set that you have right now? And then working to sort of paint that picture for yourself and on your resume and in your interview and your cover letter. And I think that you'll find, trying to kind of put yourself in those shoes, that yes, it's really interesting that I know a lot about the Supreme Court, but also I know a lot about the Supreme Court because I was really good at research and I was really good at critical thinking and writing. And so thinking about it in that context, I think you have to do a little bit of stepping back, but also stepping into what your next role will look like as it relates to your current major and your kind of skills that you've honed in that major. Having hired folks in the past and looking at resumes, I certainly see the majors that folks, had, and the minors, but really I'm looking at the bullet points you have below that. What did you gain from that major? What did you gain from that minor or that study abroad experience? That's the meat of your resume. And so while it is valuable for me to see your major, certainly think I kind of want to care about how you reflect on that and how you outline your skills, because that's what's going to be most valuable when you get to a job. Certainly, if you're applying to be an engineer or a doctor, I might care that you have a science degree or, or an engineering degree. But that's kind of the beauty of liberal arts, is that you're going to have so many different types of skills and varied skills that will be applicable to a lot of different jobs. And so really focus on what you're learning and the sort of meat of that versus the, the specific major. Even though it's easy to get hung up on that, it's not going to be the most important thing, even 1 year after you're out or 1 month. We're going to, as folks that hire, we're going to care more about the meat in your own reflection and skills that you built up along the way more than your major.
I think my advice for folks kind of transitioning to spring into to really, raise your hand. Keep putting yourself out there in different ways, from just sending an email to someone you think has an interesting job to putting together a little portfolio of something you might think about doing for an organization, using your skills that you have. And just, demonstrating your initiative, demonstrating your interest and your, the skills that you'd be able to apply in a space. Just keep kind of raising your hand, putting in a little bit of that effort in order to set yourself apart and to, really demonstrate your excitement around various organizations and work. It's very rare, I think, that you get a lot of no's if you're demonstrating that kind of excitement. And maybe you get a soft no, but you get a little, insight and learning along the way.
I think this moment in time is really a little bit scary. And certainly when I was graduating, the job market was a little bit tenuous as well. And I think, maintaining a level of hope and knowledge that you have, a whole university and college with support for you, really helps to kind of know that you have a team on your side in terms of supporting your job search. And I think that does require a level of commitment and initiative on your part to say, yep, I'm going to take this hour and I'm going to go to the Career Center. Or I'm going to take this hour and I'm going to call someone and do an informational interview, or I'm going to send an email, and kind of empowering yourself and thinking about what resources you do have. That kind of idea of abundance versus a kind of scarcity mindset, I think is really useful, because it's going to feel kind of crappy. It might, you'll have those ebbs and flows, but really trying to kind of take a step back and saying, I do have my university to support me as long as I, walk through that door or proverbial door, or I do have, a LinkedIn account and I can search people that might have a job that I'm interested in, or that's interesting to me and I want to learn more. And you can send an email. The internet is a wonderful thing, and that we can do a lot of that kind of pre-work, and make a lot of different connections because we have so much information at our fingertips. Advice that I would have for students that aren't quite graduating yet is to get started on something like a resume. Start to build the framework of what that will look like, so that once you get to a point of, hey, I want to apply for this thing, I want to apply for this internship, you're already sort of halfway there in terms of the application process. And I think sometimes speed is really beneficial to an applicant in getting your materials into an employer or, an internship opportunity. And you have a little bit of time and space to be able to work on those resumes as you are sort of in it as a student, as you are developing skills, as you are applying skills like working on a team for a team project. You're project managing. You're learning how to collaborate and deal with complex problems. So start that process early, or even start with a long list of things that you think you're good at. And you don't maybe even have to kind of form it into the resume format quite yet, but really start to kind of keep a record of those things that you're working on. I think it's really easy to forget what we do when we're students, or quickly move on to the next semester and sort of forget about that big project you did in that one class. And so giving yourself some moments of pause to reflect on that is really, really valuable. Even if it's a stream of consciousness, you got a little notepad somewhere and typing some of those notes. I do this too, as I, am in a career right now, but I'll often kind of have a tough moment with a team member or a tough problem I'm trying to solve, or I solved it. And then I write myself a little email and I said, this is what I did in this moment. So when I go to update my resume or go to an interview, I've got some notes to look back on, because it's easy to forget even big wins. And so doing a little bit of that kind of prep work along the way is really helpful. And it makes the process so much less daunting, because you don't have to start from square one when you kind of get to that point of wanting to apply to things. So just start something, start it early. I always like to think of, write shitty first drafts. Maybe that will be helpful for your papers, but just get started. And I think that can be really helpful. I think also thinking about, just keeping in mind that your first job will probably not be your last job. And that's actually pretty exciting, right? I think that gives you, for me, I thought, I'm taking one step, but that means I get to take a lot of steps forward too. And I think that your career will likely be varied. Mine certainly has been. And I think that there's some real opportunity in holding that as a positive, versus something, kind of to dwell on or to be concerned with. You're going to be able to move on. You're going to be able to make more money. You're going to be able to maybe move into something that you like a little bit more, but it takes, that positive mindset and also initiative. But a little goes a long way in that regard too. So feel confident that even taking some baby steps will serve you really well.